All right, guys, thanks for coming out tonight. Tonight we'll be doing a presentation on Silas Shepard, a paper that he wrote titled A Dream. Now, this is a Wisconsin guy who was published in a Colorado magazine, the Square and Compass magazine. This was written in October of 1941, talking about Freemasonry in the year 2050. So he was looking ahead about 110 years into the future. And now we got 2050s knocking on the door. With Masonic education back then, it was a way to give back to the community. And for a guy in Wisconsin to get published in a Colorado paper, that means a lot. So here we go. A Dream, written by Silas H. Shepard. It was Christmas morning in Shiwaukee in 2050 AD, and happiness, peace, and goodwill had almost reached the possibilities of fulfillment. Shiwaukee was one great central metropolis of the world, extending from what had been Green Bay to Danville, and from Lake Michigan to the Mississippi River. Progress in mechanical and commercial activities had grown even faster in the last 100 years than any time previous, and had eventually necessitated the centralization of urban life. This had been made practical by improved methods of fast transportation, which had made it possible to carry either freight or passengers 1,000 miles per hour, and thus made the whole world a suburb of Shiwaukee. In the 100 years from 1950 to 2050, the political, moral, and religious progress had made even greater progress than the mechanical, so that not only was Shiwaukee the metropolis of the world, but it was also the capital of the Federation of Nations. On this eventful Christmas morning, which was to witness a stupendous celebration of the only holiday that has survived the changes of the past, one of the millions of happy families are breakfasting and enjoying the family communion, which has become universal since progress has given every human being opportunity and leisure for the cultivation of intellectual and moral pursuits. Robert Caswell is a typical man of the time and devotes 4 hours each day to his vocation as a machinist. He divides the balance of time as his natural inclination leads, and is well versed in general literature, and more especially in history and philosophy. Philosophy had made such vast improvements in the physical being of man that few now consider they can afford to neglect at least an elementary knowledge of the process of thought, which have been of value to human development. Father, asked Johnny Caswell, his 14-year-old son, we are now studying the causes which led up to our present economic system, and which eventually brought about the splendid cooperation which eliminated the waste and duplication of the first half of the 20th century. When competition became so keen, not only did nations become so suspicious of each other that 2 great wars almost ruined mankind, but men seemed to believe in a philosophy of force, and only after millions of men had been slaughtered in wars that were futile to correct the useless competition did they finally learn the better way of cooperation. I cannot understand it, and wish you could give me something more about it than our textbook has mentioned. Johnny, replied the father, it has been one of the most delightful things in life to read all I could about the period of transition, which began when printing was invented, and which has not ended yet. Also, we have now arrived at a development where strife and selfishness are almost entirely curbed, and the general good of humanity is known to be the only possible way to the best interests of the individual. It cannot be explained briefly, yet I may give you a few hints that will be helpful. Of course, Father, I did not expect much this morning, as we are soon to start for the forum, and we may have some fine addresses relating to the subject. But you will make those talks easier to understand by your clear way of helping me. Pardon me, interrupted Jane the daughter, but I was reading yesterday of families in the 1940s where the father was so occupied in his business affairs that he seldom had time to more than take his meals with his family. It does not seem possible, replied Mr. Caswell, but there seems to be unquestionable evidence that such addition did exist in some cases. The only explanation I see is that the commercial and mechanical progress had developed so much faster than the intellectual and moral progress that many men lost sight of the real values and concerned themselves mainly with financial affairs. Many times, those who realized that the intellectual, moral, and spiritual needs of men were even more important than his physical needs were looked upon as visionaries and eccentrics. As far back as we have historical records, there have been men who understood the principles of human progress and endeavored to help humanity to its highest goal, but they were often misunderstood and martyred. The great teacher whose influence more than any other has made possible our present happy adjustment was misunderstood for 1950 years, and it is only since then that we have found methods to put into practice his teachings. In the past, men thought it was necessary to restrain others by force, and although they knew that they themselves were doing deeds and thinking thoughts that were wrong, they sat in judgment of their fellows, and even assumed the right to legally execute those considered harmful to society. It was only when we realized that criminals were the direct product of a condition society made that they started at the root of the evil. And instead of the old feudal methods, replaced them with methods which eliminated the making of criminals. Our textbook says that religion was one of the chief causes in the reformation of society, which seems to me to be true, but men have always been religious, and it would seem as if these conditions should have been brought about sooner, suggested Johnny. Quite true, replied Mr. Caswell. Religion is the mainspring of all human progress, but alas, how much it has been perverted and abused. The true spirit of religion has been understood by a limited number of men in all ages. But it was only about till 1950 when a knowledge of mental processes was quite thoroughly understood by every boy and girl when they finished school, that any clear conception of religion was known by the whole of all the people. When this was fully realized, the creeds and sects and systems were all laid aside, and a universal devotion adopted in which each communicant endeavors to profess his faith by his conduct. In those old crude forms, they quibbled about the most inconsistent details of form or ceremony, and seemed to lose sight of the vital principles. And what would you consider the most prominent influence in affecting the reform? Asked Johnny. Probably my idea would not meet with the general opinion on the subject, answered Mr. Caswell. But when I was a boy, Grandfather used to get reminiscent, and I owe much to his delightful resuscitations of life in the 30s and 40s of last century. He was empathetic in his statement that the Freemasons did more than any other one agency in bringing about our happy condition. He was very positive in his assertion that they taught that the whole human species was one family, when it was very unpopular, and there was most probably pronounced prejudice regarding races and creeds and nations. Even as far back as the First Great War of 1914 through 18, some of the Freemasons were stressing this particular phase of their system. But it would seem as if it was not until the Second Great War had almost wrecked civilization that they really became active in making it effective. I have heard considerable about the Freemasons and have wondered why they went out of existence, said Johnny. It seems strange that any organization with such an influence for good should have ceased to exist. Mr. Caswell replied, the principles of Freemasonry have not ceased to exist, because they are the truths of all the ages and the basis of progress and all that is best in life. But as an organization, they taught by a peculiar system of symbolism and allegory, which was necessary in past ages, but which has fortunately now been so happily corrected that we can teach directly the same truths openly. For that matter, many of our present methods of illustration are exactly those used by the Masonic lodgers of Grandfather's day. Grandfather said that when he first became a Freemason, only a limited number of those who joined the lodges were really interested in its important phases, and that it took many years to arouse the keen interest in its vital principles so that it really began to reflect them in everyday life of its members. After that, the progress was rapid. When they fully realized that the fatherhood of God and the brotherhood of man were attainable and very practical, the very brightest intellects worked day and night for its consummation. They found that the most of the ills of humanity were due to ignorance of those basic truths which Freemasonry had been trying to teach for ages. and what were taught in the Sermon on the Mount. They have been known to all the great men of every age, and we are still working for a still higher and more perfect society, and must ever continue because nothing transitory is perfect. I see it as time to start for the forum, said Jane, and the morning conversation ended. All right, so there you have it. We got a paper written by Silas Shepherd about 80 years ago, talking about the end of Freemasonry in 2050. And like he says in there, it was always kept secret. Freemasons taught by a peculiar system of symbols and allegories, which were necessary in the past, but maybe not so necessary now to keep things secret.
Well, I guess I would say at one point, everybody knew who the Freemasons in town were. They knew who Dad was, who Grandfather was. They knew they were going out to meetings. But what they discussed at those meetings, aside from the meeting itself, but the interactivities they were going to have with the community, that they never shared with anybody, and that was probably the first step towards their downfall.
Yeah, not sharing what they're actually doing behind the closed doors.
Yeah, the Masons weren't secrets. Secretive. It was their actions that were secretive.
Yeah. So what do you think that we can do to help Freemasonry grow and expand? If we look at our membership in the state, we're kind of holding steady. We're losing some members, we're gaining some. In the next 20 years, 20, 30 years, a lot of people are saying that Freemasonry might be done. And it doesn't have to be that way if we don't let it,
Personally, I think the best way to get back out and get us known as being out in the community being out there. Obviously, there's things that we can't say outside of closed doors, but that is only a handful of things versus what we can talk about, the fellowship, the leadership, the learning aspect of Freemasonry. That is all things that can be acquired once you take that initial first step into a lodge. And a lot of people look at it as a different look. They see the 1% of us being under closed doors, and they don't understand that it's much more to Freemasonry than just our meetings and the few things that we keep in secrecy.
Yeah, I mean, we say it's in our the one things that need to be kept secret are modes of recognition. And we have at our district meeting not that long ago where they talked about how we need to be more open with Masonry and talk about the symbolism. It's okay to talk about it. At least with a lot of brothers in the United States, I see like more of the younger men are more open to talking about it. There's some other brothers that just want it to be kept completely secret and are okay with only having 5 lodges in the whole state. What do you guys think about that? Some brothers say there needs to be less lodges, less Masons, and more pure and a tighter group. I think our group is already almost tight enough, and if the lodges start to keep falling and consolidating, then what's going to be left of the future of Masonry?
I think the idea of having a pure person in a lodge is not accurate. There is no such thing as a 100% pure person. Everybody has their flaws. But at the same time, I definitely don't think it should be open. It shouldn't be where everybody under the sun is running in to join a lodge. Obviously, it's not made for everybody. Not everybody wants to be in a Mason or taking a step further, being a Shrine or under any of the other organizations that Freemasonry has to offer.
Yeah.
But it takes their initial step, their free will to want to learn and grow with the organization and grow as a person. And that's something that us as Freemasons can't push onto people.
Right.
We can keep it available, open it up, and accept them in and try to build them up. But if they can't take that initial first step, it shouldn't be on us to force them through it.
Yeah, absolutely. We see a lot of that. Like for me personally, becoming a Mason, I want to teach people about Masonry, and sometimes you find a good candidate or somebody who's got some good qualities and characteristics, and say, hey, you'd make a good Mason. If you're ever interested, here's a petition. But they have to want to do it, and we can't push it on them. But what do you think that we can do to make Freemasonry more appealing? Does anybody have any suggestions on what we can do as a fraternity, as a lodge in Burlington, to let ourselves be known to the public with what we're doing, and how can we draw more people in?
Well, we always used to say that we do what we do not for the recognition. We're not looking for a pat on the back. well, maybe we don't need the pat on the back, but it wouldn't be a bad idea to get the word out at least.
Right.
You know, letting people know what we did isn't patting ourselves on the back. It's letting you know, here's what we're available for.
Right.
And we've always, a lot of people say, we never knew about you.
Right.
Right. I blame that on us. That's our
Yeah.
fault. So by us getting the word out to the communities more, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is what we've always been doing.
Right.
Now we're not asking for the pat on the back, but it's not a bad thing when we get a little blurb in the paper or the media.
Sure. Yes, like let ourselves be known, like let ourselves, a lot of people in Burlington for the parade or this, oh, I never knew there was a Masonic Lodge in Burlington. Well, we've had Freemasons in Burlington for 175 years and there's people who don't even know that we exist, you know.
And the parade passes in front of our building.
It does, so I think, you know, I think we're on the right path with our lodge. We got a lot of good guys here that, you know, we're very active and we believe in all the same things with just trying to let ourselves be known. And it's not like we're going out trying to recruit people. Like it would be nice to have some new members come in. But what we're doing is if we just let people know what we're about and what we're doing, the good deeds that we're doing, the brotherhood, the fellowship that we have, like I think if we just keep doing what we're doing, we should have a drop. People should want to come to us and be a part of a organization like this.
I think the best thing too is just as simple as your polo. It says Wisconsin Freemasonry. That is a conversation starter. Just having a t-shirt or a hat that has the logo or something Freemasonry will spark up a conversation. We're all members of society. We all have a normal day job. We all have lives outside of the lodge. But that doesn't mean we don't take the lodge with us or our masonry ways outside of the lodge. We live that day by day.
Right.
Nothing says that someone isn't going to talk to you about what you do outside of work or
Right.
like with your, you know, when you go to school conferences with your kids, their teachers are going to be asking questions about things of that nature. There's nothing that says that it's not good publicity to be wearing, in a sense, merchandise or
Right.
in a sense, a walking advertisement, to get the word out there and just to sprinkle it throughout the community or even the state. I mean, even at state fairs or county fairs, wearing the logo is a definite big step, and it's even better when you walk and find another member of a different lodge, because
Right.
you can go just about anywhere and you can find a Freemason, and
Yep.
you know they're a Freemason just from their handshake.
Yep. And like I said in the paper, like we're in this transitory period, you know, where we go from the old school textbook to now a digital age. So now we're more present on the digital platforms. We're teaching more people about Freemasonry and what we're doing, what we're about. A lot of the old textbooks and Masonic education, just like this one right here that was written in 1941. From the brother I got this from, the pages were falling apart when he was going through it, but he was able to take pictures of it, and then I was able to digitize it into a format that we can now print out and read and teach openly about this stuff. So in conclusion here is Freemasonry, it doesn't need to be kept secret. There's certain arts, parts, and points that need to be kept secret, but it's okay to talk about it. And we have some brothers that just want to keep it closed doors always. You know, when we have our public installation, when we have our open house for the Christmas parade, or get involved with the music in the park in the summer, or any other of our pancake breakfast, or any events that are open to the public, we got to keep doing that for the good of the order and the future of Freemasonry. So, all right, well, there you have it, guys. Thanks for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
All right.